Two superpowers. One planet. Battle that could have ended life as we know it. Their Cold War. A conflict fought not with bullets but with fear, not with armies but with ideology. For nearly half a century, the world stood on the edge of nuclear destruction, caught between the United States and the Soviet Union, in a silent war that shaped the modern world. It all began in the ashes of World War II. Europe was in ruins, cities reduced to rubble, millions dead. Two nations emerged from the destruction stronger than ever: the United States, champion of democracy and capitalism, and the Soviet Union, defender of communism and control. Both believed they were right. Both believed the other was a threat to humanity itself, and neither was willing to back down. The war that ended in 1945 didn't bring peace. It simply changed form. Tanks gave way to tension. Guns were replaced by propaganda. The world entered an era where every word, every move, every shadow could trigger global catastrophe. It was called Cold because the two sides never fought each other directly. But make no mistake, it was still a war. A war for hearts, minds, and the future of the planet. In the West stood America, powerful, confident, rich, armed with atomic weapons and a promise of freedom. In the East stood the Soviet Union, vast, disciplined, secretive, driven by a dream of equality, but ruled by fear. At first, there was uneasy respect. The Allies had fought side by side to defeat Nazi Germany. But as soon as victory was won, suspicion filled the void. The Iron Curtain fell across Europe, dividing East and West, communism and capitalism, darkness and light. In 1949, the world changed forever. The Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb. Suddenly, America no longer held the monopoly on nuclear power. The balance of fear began. Both sides built weapons faster than ever, bombs powerful enough to wipe out entire cities. They called it mutually assured destruction. If one attacked, both would be destroyed. It was a madness disguised as safety. But this war wasn't just fought in laboratories and missile silos. It was fought in the shadows, through spies, sabotage, and secrets. In dark alleys of Berlin and Moscow, men traded briefcases filled with stolen plans. Agents whispered lies, governments spread propaganda, and citizens lived under the constant shadow of suspicion. Every neighbor could be a spy, every letter a trap. Fear was the weapon, and the whole world was the battlefield. As the 1950s began, the Cold War spread beyond Europe. The United States built alliances, NATO in the West, while the Soviets formed their own, the Warsaw Pact. Each side gathered allies like chess pieces, preparing for a game that could never truly be won. Then came the Korean War, the first real test. North Korea, backed by the Soviets and China, invaded the South, supported by America. The war ended in a stalemate, but it made one thing clear. This cold conflict could turn hot in an instant. In the skies, another race began, not for land, but for the stars. The space race became a symbol of power. In 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. The world looked up in awe and fear. For the first time, mankind had entered space, and it was the Soviets who got there first. America responded fast, creating NASA, sending men to the moon, and turning science into a new kind of weapon. Technology wasn't just progress anymore, it was survival. But the true nightmare came in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union secretly placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the US coast. For 13 days, the world held its breath. One wrong move, one wrong decision, and it would have meant the end of civilization. American ships surrounded Cuba, Soviet ships moved closer, and both sides prepared for nuclear war. Finally, at the last moment, logic prevailed. The Soviets agreed to remove the missiles, and the US secretly removed theirs from Turkey. The crisis ended, but the world had seen how close it had come to annihilation. Through the 1960s and 70s, the war continued in new forms. In Vietnam, America tried to stop communism from spreading, but instead, it found itself trapped in a brutal, endless conflict. Millions died, protests erupted across America, and the image of the United States as a hero began to fade. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union expanded its influence across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, funding revolutions, training rebels, spreading its ideology wherever it could. Then came the next phase, détente, a fragile peace. Leaders on both sides realized that constant tension was unsustainable. Treaties were signed, phone lines were installed between Washington and Moscow, and for a brief moment, it seemed like humanity might finally step back from the edge. But peace never lasted long. In 1979, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan reignited the fire. America supported Afghan fighters, the Mujahideen, with weapons and money, while the Soviets poured in troops. The war dragged on for a decade, draining Soviet strength and morale. In the background, new technology emerged: computers, satellites, and the dawn of digital surveillance. The Cold War had entered the information age. By the 1980s, the world was changing fast. A new US President, Ronald Reagan, called the Soviet Union an evil empire and launched a massive arms buildup. The race for military dominance returned with full force. The Soviets tried to keep up, but their economy was crumbling. Inside the Soviet Union, people were tired. Shortages, censorship, corruption. The system that had promised equality had delivered only control. Then came a new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, who brought two revolutionary ideas: glasnost, openness, and perestroika, reform. He wanted to modernize communism, but in doing so, he unleashed forces he couldn't control. People began to question everything. The fear that had kept the Soviet system together started to dissolve. In 1989, the unthinkable happened. The Berlin Wall, that concrete symbol of division, came crashing down. East and West Germans hugged, cried, and crossed freely for the first time in decades. The Cold War's heart had been broken. 2 years later, the Soviet Union itself collapsed. The red flag with the hammer and sickle was lowered for the last time. The Cold War was over, but its legacy remains. The arms race left behind thousands of nuclear weapons still active today. The rivalries it created still echo across politics, technology, and global alliances. The United States emerged as the sole superpower, while Russia struggled to rebuild. And the world learned a terrifying truth, that victory in such a war can still feel like defeat. For nearly half a century, humanity lived under the shadow of total destruction. The Cold War may have been cold, but it burned through generations, shaping nations and defining what it meant to survive in a divided world. It was more than a battle for land or power. It was a battle for belief, for ideology, for the soul of the future. And though the war ended, the tension never truly disappeared. The ghosts of that silent conflict still whisper in every political crisis, every nuclear threat, every uneasy peace. Because history has shown, the most dangerous wars are the ones that never end with a bang.